Thanks, Danny. Appreciate you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. For our first meeting of this session, I call the Small Business Development Committee to order. And at this time, I've asked Representative Danny Mathis to lead us in prayer. What number? 20? 23? 20, got it.
All right, let's pray. Father, we thank you for today. We thank you for many blessings that you've given us. Help us to come up with new ideas to help small businesses. We know that's a backbone of this country, backbone of this state. We just pray that we'd make good decisions to help these folks thrive and do the will of you. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Representative Mathis. Before we go to the rules and adopt the rules, I'd like to call on Chairman Todd Jones. He's going to be presenting to us and talking about his experiences in small business. And small
business, is that what he's got?
It started off small. And then it grew. So anyway, Chairman Jones, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it, members of the committee. The chairman asked me to come and give just a few remarks in terms of what my experiences have been around growing and developing businesses. I want to go ahead and focus on three areas: culture, finance, and workforce. And hopefully I'll be able to put into context all three of those as your committee is contemplating different policies that can help in all three. I'm going to also focus my comments in the tech sector because I believe if any comments outside of the tech sector would be replete with material errors. I just have never done a business outside of the tech sector, to be completely frank with you. So the first and foremost thing that I want to talk about is culture. What do I mean by that? We need to, as the state of Georgia, we need to be looking at what we can do to change the way that the state, and I don't mean the state as the government, I'm just talking about culturally speaking, how we view failure. If you were to look at the Mount Rushmore of entrepreneurs, I would argue with you, you'd put Edison up, you'd put Musk up, you'd put Jobs up, and I'm just talking about modern entrepreneurs. Every one of them has something in common. They've all succeeded, and we all know all their great successes. As a matter of fact, thank God for Mr. Edison in terms of the light we have on, right? But we also know that all three of them failed miserably across the board. What you see when you go to the Silicon Valley, when you go to the Research Triangle, when you go to Austin, when you go up to Cambridge, meaning Massachusetts, there's a culture of acceptance of failure. Don't get me wrong, it's not, encouraged, but there's this understanding that failure brings wisdom. Show me anyone, I'll say past the age of 25, who says I've never failed before. They've never tried anything. I remind my high school students when I'm speaking to them, trust me, when you first got onto a bike, you didn't wing it. Trust me, mom or dad or someone was running behind you, making sure you didn't end up in a ditch. Now, you may remember it that the first time you got on, you rode it, but you didn't. You failed your way to success. There are so many different things where we see failure to success, but for some reason, what I have found in the state of Georgia, as I've been here, 20 years, is for some reason I have seen men and women who go after the American dream, they fail, and suddenly they have what's the equivalent of the scarlet letter. Now, I'm not here to say that I have the solution for this, but I do know this. If we don't encourage those who fail to get back up, dust off, and try again, we lose potentially an Edison, a Musk, a Jobs. Of course, we can go back to Abraham Lincoln. We all know how many times he failed at political office and in business, so we can talk about him too. My point being is, I know this. Everyone talks about my successes, and I'm flattered by that. I am. 7 companies. The 7th one in action right now, and I've promised my wife it's my last one. As a matter of fact, I think it's just the opposite. She has threatened me that it's my last one. But I've had 4 successes that everyone likes to talk about, but I've had 2 failures. No one wants to talk to me about that. And actually, if you ask me what have I learned, what I'm about to say the next 2 times, the next 2 subjects, finance and workforce, I learned from my failures. No, don't get me wrong, it was augmented by my successes, but it was my failures that, in my opinion, allowed me to become successful. So let's move on to finance. In the tech sector, you're seeing a significant amount of, I'll say, capital right now being built up in Atlanta, and it's super exciting for me, I'll be honest. We're seeing for angel, we're seeing for mezzanine, and we're seeing for class and round A, we got about $3 billion sitting on the sidelines. Guys, that's really good compared to where we were even 5 years ago. Does it come close to California, the Research Triangle, Cambridge, and Austin? No. But hey, we are definitely trending upper right. We're going to be able to move more and more tech companies just because of that $3 billion. But let's pause for a second. We have a huge challenge when, quote, they become successful. Because about 10 to 15% of them are going to get past $10 million in revenue, which means they're going to get to effectively, if you look at a revenue curve, and I was going to do graphs, Mr. Chairman, but I didn't think we had time, they're going to curve up like a hockey stick. Our Class C funding, which is where that's about to start, Class D, is less than $1 billion. Down here, where they start, they may need 100,000, 200,000, 500,000, every blue moon $1 million. Up here, when they hit that curve and they're at 10 million and they need to grow, they need 4 million, 5 million, 10 million, 20 million. So trust me, $1 billion sounds like a lot, but it actually goes pretty quick. And the challenges are, my respect to Mr. Chastain, banks still look at that funding, meaning their investment committees, in terms of, okay, are you meeting all what I'll say the third industrial revolution metrics? What is your free cash flow? What does your EBITDA look like, et cetera? In the tech world, we literally can be growing 10, 15, 20% a month. But our receivables are 60 and 90 days out. So we are burning, it looks like we're burning cash, but in fact, what's happening is we're accruing a significant amount of, I'll say, accounts receivable, but we're still having a gap sometimes of $1 million, $2 million, and to get a traditional bank financing isn't easy. So we need to be thinking about different ways, and I don't know if it's credit support, I don't know if it's encouraging the A's to move to C, etc. But keep in mind, I'm down here as an investor too. And the reason I am, because I got a shot at what I call a 100-bagger, 100x on my return. A Class C, that's a 10x return. Don't get me wrong, a great return. But most investors love the fact that I can get in at the ground floor versus waiting for the maturity of the business. Now I'm only getting in, say, at the 10th floor. Granted, 10x is great, but 100x is a lot better. So it's hard to shift an investor out of the mindset of an angel, a mezzanine, and an A to move them to C, because that just isn't in their, I'll say, their investment portfolio. So how do we work with banks, traditional banks, I mean? How do we work with merchant banks? How do we get them comfortable? Is there credit support that we can provide to them? Let me shift now to workforce. Our challenge in the tech sector isn't not that we don't have brilliant kids. Trust me, these kids are more brilliant than I ever was. They're brilliant. They're going to cure Alzheimer's. They're going to cure Parkinson. They're going to cure cancer. I'm convinced of all of this. But there's two things that this generation is challenged with. And it's effectively our generation's fault. We have stopped critical thinking in education. Okay? I'm sorry, but every time I ask someone to do X, Y, or Z, they look at me and it's effectively, well, is there a formula for that? No, there's not a formula for that. It's never been thought of before. So think outside the box. And yet they're like, outside the box? But I know the box. I'm like, well, good for you. But we wouldn't have a lot of the inventions we have without being outside the box. Critical thinking has, for some reason, we've lost it in education. And by the way, that's private ed, public ed, so this is not, I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying, as a general statement, we are getting, call it new grads, maybe 2 to 4 year experience grads that don't see or understand just how important outside the box thinking. The second issue that we see with this generation is a lack, going back to the first problem. So many of them are paralyzed by this. Well, I got a great idea, but you know what? 1,000 of my followers may make fun of me if I fail. Who cares? All of us have put our name on a ballot before, so we're all not afraid of failure. But that's the minority. We have to get this generation to understand that failure is part of the process. And you know what? If you have an idea, go for it. My grandparents, my great-grandparents, every time I spoke to them as they got towards, I'll just say, the end, never once did they regret going for something. They gave me a list of regrets of what they wish they would have done. But none of them said to me, man, I wish I didn't do that. We have to help them understand that going for it is the American dream. What differentiates our country, what differentiates our state from maybe China, maybe Germany, just fill in any global competitor, is the fact that this country has always been willing to go for it. The Wild West, whatever metaphor you want to use. We lose that edge. We almost lose our competitive advantage against the world. You never hear about, quote, you always hear China's stealing our IP. I never hear, oh, we're stealing China's IP. You know why? I don't want it. Ours is better. But that's because we have traditionally thought outside the box. Germany can engineer like it's no one's business once they understand what they need to engineer. We're the ones that came up with the idea of what needs to be engineered. So those are the three things I'll leave you with, Mr. Chairman. To me, we have to find a way to shift the culture. We have to get to that growth capital phase where we help our banks get more comfortable with a more, I'll say, non-traditional funding portfolio. And then I think we need to do everything we can to help our children to be able to get accustomed to outside the box and get accustomed to risk taking. So, sir, unless there's any questions, I'm going to excuse myself.
I am going to open up the floor to questions right now, and I'm going to start with my question. Chairman's prerogative. Investment banks. There's a bunch of them in New York. How can we attract them down here?
Thank you for asking that. And for the record, the chairman and I did not discuss this. I have an idea that I want to proffer to you and the committee. The only way, in my opinion, we get the IBs, the PEs, and the VCs to see us as a place where they want to anchor is, in a sense, we got to feed them. Let them see just how brilliant the minds are in Georgia. It's agri-tech, it's logistics tech, it's cyber tech. I mean, I can keep going, guys. Mm-hmm. So how do we do that? In my opinion, we roadshow. Let's go to New York. Let's go to Silicon Valley. Let's convince these banks, hey, each of you put in, and PEs and VCs, not just the investment banks, put in $250 a year for 3 years. And they're going to look at us and go, $250, what's that? I go, well, first of all, I know that's literally less than your toilet paper budget. So it's a rounding error to you. But here's what you're going to get. We're going to move deal flow to you on a monthly basis. It's going to blow your mind because you think only brilliant minds exist in the Triangle, only in the Valley, only in Austin, etc. I'm telling you, Georgia, we have everything to offer. But I think if we feed them that, let them see how much great can come out of our state, I think suddenly we'll start seeing satellite offices, and then eventually maybe even they'll plant themselves here in Atlanta. But I do think we need to go to them first, and we need to basically do a roadshow, no different than as if we're taking a company public.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. We've got a question, number 15.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it. Thank you so much to my colleague. I was just having a conversation with some of our colleagues that we need to make ourselves known and go to businesses that are opening or projection of their whatever their business is, so that we can have those conversations, so that they can know that we are in the game also to help and to assist and move it right along. And so if we can too, I don't know if we can go to New York, but if we can have them come here and visit us, because there's so many more of us in this General Assembly that can persuade them that we do have what they need to invest in. So I thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Cool. Chairman Jones, I know you're pressed for time, and I appreciate you making time for us. Thank you very much for your presentation. I know we're going to take it as a committee into consideration on what we can do, and collectively with all the committees that we represent, maybe we can come up with changing the culture, improving the finance, and definitely energizing the workforce. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman.
Cool. I need to keep on a kind of a tight schedule. Chairman Jones, Chairman Thomas, thank you. The floor is yours.
Well, to be fair, when I agreed to do this, I didn't know I was following him. I'm like the bad karaoke singer.
I think he's passionate. and I love it.
Yeah. Well, good morning, y'all. Thank you for having me here today, and thank you. I think this is a really great opportunity. I've worked in the professional services side, so as most of you know, I'm a registered professional engineer, and I've came in as a partner on one firm and actually did a startup on another. So I gotta tell you, there's challenges for small business, unique challenges, and I think it's multifaceted, and this has always been my concern is the barriers to starting a business. Before I can even get into the barriers, I probably ought to talk about the foundation, like the philosophy behind it. I've always believed that what made America great is the ability to create a small business. It's what really makes us unique, and wealth generation and multi-generational wealth growth. I mean, it's just what makes us so special. And I'm going to just tell an anecdotal story because I'm not quite as organized as Todd. I was out at Microsoft. I took a trip out to Microsoft, and they had a picture. I don't know if y'all know, it's their 50th anniversary, and they had this picture on the wall of all the founding members of Microsoft, and they said, well, the young kids starting a business, and I was really excited, and then we got into all of the new policy we need to start looking at, right? I'm sorry, creating. And I told them, I said, you all have 208,000 employees. I'm sure you could care less about as some extra policy. But I think about those 10 kids on that table that you showed me in this picture earlier, and how does that affect them? Because I'm not, I'm fine with Microsoft, but I'm fighting for those 10 kids. It's that next group of 10 kids. My suggestion, first of all, to all of you is always keep that in mind. Regulation, the hardest part, and that's what I'm hooking it back in now. One of the hardest parts of running a small business is the fact that it's nebulous. You have no idea what you're supposed to do. You're constantly worried did I not do something right? Am I going to be fined for the government because for some reason I missed something that there's no way for me to know because I'm a small business owner. Listen, we're all on the same page here. You don't know what you don't know. And there's no real, I have to tell you, in my opinion, and I'm sure there'll be 50 people hop on me right after this meeting's over with, but I don't feel like there is really a place that you can go that really, a one-stop shop of how do I build a small business in the state of Georgia. That's one of the challenges, I think. One of the next challenges is the fact that, talent. We're in a talent crunch, but where there's, I guess where there's always opportunity, and I think there's opportunities for small businesses to be able to find that niche, because the one thing that small businesses are very good at is the ability to operate efficiently. I mean, I love government is a prime example of how really not to build things. Because it's hierarchical and it just kind of continues to fill out, and big businesses is the same way. I mean, it just multi-layers, high administrative costs, and I think that's another thing we need to always make sure that we're doing. Again, I'm going to kind of continue to beat on this, making sure we're keeping red tape and develop availability for small businesses to grow. I think it's important. I think some of the challenges I see Georgia, we're going to have to accept what I think the future is. The future is we're going to be a tech-driven society. That's just going to happen. And I know Todd and I are I'm on his vice chair for technology, so you're probably getting two tech people right in a row. But it is the future. It is coming. There's been technologies come out. I know you all have heard me talk about it in the past. That, hey, listen, this probably isn't the one, right? But the data centers and this ability to crunch data and artificial intelligence and just this information age is if there was a place that we could find some spots to help these young entrepreneurs of tomorrow, that's I think looking in those areas would be beneficial. I'd like to see, because that economic activity, I believe, is just going to permeate through the rest. I mean, obviously, if you have more people, you're going to need more agricultural products. You're going to there's more services. So, but I think that fundamental shift is definitely something that we're going to have to focus on and really make a priority. Outside that, I got a meeting in 8 minutes with, so I'd be happy to take questions. I'd love to.
I'm going to, because of lack of time, I'm going to limit the questions. So, but what I want to say is we've got to do a better job of touching our young people and getting them interested in small business. And I think that's that culture thing that Todd spoke earlier about. And what would you suggest as far as trying to get kids and young people and business and engineers, students, saying, okay, I don't want to work for a major corporation. I want to be my own boss?
Well, I've lived that life, so I can appreciate that. I love Todd. I see his points, but I think that one of the biggest things is the amount of fear of the risk. And I get the I'm not talking about fear of, hey, I'm going to lose my money or whatever. I'm talking about the fear that government's going to come down on them if they don't, if they miss some paperwork. Like, it's so nebulous to a small business owner of how I can stay in compliance. I think that there's always that fear that does it, and I have to tell you, I think there's some other issues that are even independent of this, and I would say one of them is this housing issue that we've got, and maybe I've kind of got a little bit of a different take on this, but my belief, and this isn't a belief, this is just a simple fact. American wealth, the middle class wealth, has been built off home ownership. And there's how many companies were started by a family who pulled out a home equity line of credit on the equity that they built in their house to start a business. I've been telling you all, that's going away because we're setting up this perpetual renter, because first of all, kids can't even afford to get into the housing market. So it takes money to make money, and that is an old business adage that's not new to me. That's been around for a long time. Well, I think we're creating even more barriers by not figuring out a way to take care of this housing problem. And again, I'm not for rent. I'm talking about ownership houses. And it's a challenge. I don't know if you all have seen here in Atlanta, but I mean, a significant number of these houses are being bought up by real estate investors. I'm going to give an anecdotal story of just in my own life. I had bought a second home for my mom, and she lived in the house, and we put it up for sale, and we had multiple offers on the property. And several of them were investment firms, and we chose to take the lesser deal and put a first-time home buyer in it. But that was my decision as the business owner. But it's an existential problem to small business. We've got to figure out how to give these kids wealth mechanisms. And granted, there does need to be risk involved in it. I'm not saying, hey, let's go give the kids $50,000 so they can open a business. But what I am saying is that we have to make sure we're setting the mechanisms in place so that way they can get enough wealth, because you're never going to build wealth off a salary. That's just not realistic. So I would say we have to focus on some of those type policies. At the same time, we've got issues with our education system. I mean, when I'm finding out that at third graders, there's 60% of third graders can't even read on grade level. I mean, that's an issue. But and the answer isn't always throw money at it. So did somebody say, what is it? Yeah. Yeah. So my artificial intelligence, and I'm sorry, I know this is a little bit off business, but it all ties together. Yeah, well, on my AI subcommittee, one of the things that recommendations that we made is there's AI software out there right now that exists that can teach kids how to read. And it can get our teachers, instead of having to teach to the bottom third of the class, they can teach critical thinking. They can teach critical thinking to these kids because they're not so busy trying to deal with the admin and trying to pull the rest of the kids up to where the class is at. So, and the neat thing about some of this technology is it has the ability to learn from the kids. So it will learn how a child learns and then teach him or her the way that they need to learn. I really feel like, Chairman Chokas, I really feel like if we were to make the investments in a couple of those places, that we could get rid of literacy. And I know this is probably rose-colored glasses, but within the next 15 years, we wouldn't even have it if we could just focus on investing our money the right way. And I think a lot of it starts in the education system. I think we've just got some challenges ahead of us, and I appreciate you pulling this together to get some ideas. And I'm obviously always available to the committee. Happy to talk with you all, but I made a commitment to be somewhere in 2 minutes.
Chairman Thomas, thank you.
Yes, sir.
We have other people that want to speak, but we appreciate you taking the time out. And I've made notes of the fears, the barriers, and education, and the home ownership and equity in it. We'll see what we can do, and we're going to keep you in the loop.
That's a big lift.
Thank you.
No problem. But whatever we can do to make it clear to small business how they can stay out of the government or stay in compliance, I think even an information campaign I think would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Cool. All right. Emery, Reverend Donahue, thank you for coming here. Another champion of small business. I appreciate you being here. The floor is yours, my friend.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury. I come here and I tell people all the time, there's a gentleman back home that is saying was only in America. What a country. And Derek knows who I'm talking about, but that's the way my life started. When I was 6, 7, 8 years old, I lived about 200 yards from a store. So every morning I wasn't in school, I had a little burlap bag. I would walk down and pick up Coke bottles, take them to the store and get 4 cents a bottle. Every week I had about $10. That was a lot of money in the late 60s, early 70s. So I always had money, and we weren't rich. We were a middle-class family. But every morning I committed to go out and look for other people's trash like that. And as we grew older in high school, I was elected president of the Key Club. We went from 12 members. We had $13.57 in our budget. We grew it to 67 members. I'm going to tell you how we ended up with almost $20,000 in 1975 in our budget in high school. We started off with, we have to make money. The photography class came to me every day and said, we need to take pictures. We take football, basketball, but we need pictures. So I said, well, let's put a calendar together. So we sold a calendar of like the Miss January, Mr. February, whatever, and we put that together. Cost us nothing, and we sold them for $5 back then and sold several hundred. But then I went to a place called the Cake Box, it was a donut shop, and I negotiated as a 17-year-old how I was going to buy donuts, sell them in the school, and I negotiated with the milkman to buy milk and orange drink and chocolate milk. So I negotiated 4 cents a carton, and each donut, 4 cents a donut. So we brought them in, and I guaranteed I'd buy 10 dozen every day. But the teachers were hooked because I gave them a free donut. So the whole class came and bought a donut and a carton of milk, and they paid $0.25 for a donut and $0.25 for a carton of milk. So we were making money. Well, in the first 6 weeks, we created 30 dozen donuts a day that we were selling. And by selling donuts, doing the calendar, we ended up pretty much with like $19,800 something. We flew to the convention first class. while all the other guys rode on a school bus. So if we want to outwork the competition, you're going to not fail in this country. And that's what started me off going into marketing, realizing the marketing motto is find the need and fulfill the need. And if we do stuff like that, we'll never have a problem. So at 23 years old, I started with partners, K&D Transportation. It was a logistics company, and we pretty much went on and decided, well, real estate works pretty amazing. This was a C corporation. And then we started Head Incorporated, which was the S Corp that the other companies paid rent to. And we had a company called Extra Storage. So everybody paid rent to Head Incorporated. And then later we started Donahue Properties, which was real estate buying homes and properties, and then Legacy Farms, which we have still today. The whole process, I tell people, government, when I first started, if you can imagine an 18-wheeler carrying 80,000 pounds of product. But in Mississippi, you could only carry 73,680. In Illinois, you could carry 76,760 pounds. In Virginia, you could carry 73,660. So when you have an 80,000 pound load, government was really messing it up to where we couldn't take loads of our full capacity weight up through these states. Well, finally, it seems like somebody came up and pushed it to where we could load 48-foot trailers to 54-foot trailers, and we continuously had the weight limits going up to 80,000. That helped. The whole process is we looked at so many things that government would have that they would impose us. If I drove through a certain state, I had to pay fuel tax. And I had to do a report every quarter that let them know how many miles I drove through the state, how many times I drove through the state, how much fuel I bought. When you're filling up a 350-gallon tank of diesel and 150 for diesel for a reefer refrigerated unit, not the marijuana kind, but the one that cools the product. And with that, that's a lot of money. One state could be 18 cents higher, 20 cents higher, so we avoided those states. But you had to stop and buy so much fuel as you passed through it. Now they've changed that a lot in 2011. They came up and changed it, and there was a couple of things I wanted to go back to. I started my company in 1981 and trained a lot of people within the industry after starting this business, and sold it in 2011. The business that we had, it was basically where you had to have an ICC number, which is an interstate commerce number. That number allowed them to identify you as you travel through the country. And then we had FID, Federal Identification Number. And government, they can log on to anything with that number if you're pulled over the road, and they can tell you exactly what's going on and who you are and who the trucks are. And we had owner-operators as most of our drivers. And, we had a couple of drive-ins that we used and owned. But with it, we had the opportunity to use small business to grow and grow and grow, and we did. And within there, other companies spun off that worked with our company. And it was never competition that we didn't like each other. It was always friendly competition. But then after I sold in 2011, I remember, back to when I was 23, I put $100,000 on my new house that my wife and I just bought. Had 10 years to pay it back when I bought it, and we paid it back in a year. So we worked hard, worked around the clock, and we paid it. Each company that we started after that was debt-free. We didn't borrow money. We were blessed to go ahead and take the money we saved because we lived on a budget. And living on a budget means that we didn't go out and try to show everybody we had a good year. We put money back for a rainy day. And those are the things I try to teach people. We looked at 2011 when I sold pretty much the companies. In 2014, the others, except Donahue Properties and Legacy Farm, I started buying houses because bankers in here understand banks did not want to own houses. And you could buy houses at a cash price for a quarter on a dollar. So we started this business, and that's how we started making money on houses and cabins. The houses that we could buy that were $300,000 back then were 4 bedrooms, 4 bath for $300,000, and we could buy them for $85,000 to $100,000 cash. Think about that. Now that same house is selling $650,000 to $700,000. So people can't go out and afford these houses. The house that was $100,000 is now $300,000, and that's why what Brad was talking about, our market, basically young people can't afford to buy new houses. And we do need to figure out bringing the cost level back with all the inflation that we've had in the last few years. Hopefully we can do that. But basically, in this country, you can do and be anything you want to be. All you have to do is outwork your competition. And any questions, I know we have a fireman, Marine, and ex-prison mate of mine behind me. So,
Henry, I will open it up to questions, but I was taking some notes on some of the advice that you said, and that was you look to the long term and you're frugal,
right?
And you spend your money wisely and invest it. And one of the things that I've always, when I speak to kids, I said the best investment you can ever make in your life is in yourself.
It's true.
And whether it's in business or in education or whatever, invest in yourself and
believe in yourself.
And believe in
Mr.
yourself.
Chairman, one of the things, spoke twice this week, twice last week to seniors. I told them, I said, everyone that's going to college, step over here. Everyone that's going to a technical college, step over here. And some of you will have to go in the military because freedom isn't free. All the ones that go over here was 98% for college. And I always let them know, most of you aren't going to go to where you really want to go. And I'm not trying to tell you not to go to college, but if you go to the technical college, you're going to walk out with a 100% job. You're going to end up, 67% will make more money than all of them that come out of college. Now that's, again, pushing one that I've witnessed and seen 30 years of progress. So that's what I tell most of these young people. Out of every class, you'll have 5 to 6 people will walk over from the college and say, I might want to be a dental hygienist. I might want to be a plumber. And they change their mind because I give them the vision of owning the business, not working for the company, which we have to do both.
Well, Emery, before I let you go, I'm going to put one little plug in for the technical college. There's a gentleman in Americus, he's passed away. His name is Parker. And Mr. Parker graduated in one of the first heating and air classes at South Georgia Technical College and decided to create his own company. And grew that to one of the largest in our area, multi-cities, and retired very, very successful. I can't remember how many crews he has out and how many locations, but he's and given back to the technical college. Well, with that being said, I'm going to let you go because we're going to try to get McCullum next. He's been waiting patiently. So, Derek, thank you, Emery. Appreciate it. Derek, come on up. The floor is yours, my friend. You've got 2 hours.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate you asking me to come. Small businesses, as everyone probably knows, is the backbone of America and always have been. When a lot of, one thing that makes America great is our diversity. Obviously, I'm a Marine veteran. One thing that makes America the best fighting force in the world is our diversity. We're a melting pot, and everybody has great ideas. And I think small businesses have always been the backbone of our country. And one thing that seems to be a theme with all the speakers is red tape with government. If you imagine being in America in 1935, 1940. You wanted to start a store, you went in your front yard, you built a building, and you started a store in your front yard. You didn't have any red tape. You started selling whatever you were selling, goods. Now, it costs so much money to start a business just because you have to jump through all the government hoops. You have to get all these permits. And we have discouraged people from starting small businesses, unfortunately, because of that. Obviously been a business owner pretty much all my adult life. I owned a hardware store for 12 years. I run it and sold it. One thing about being a small business owner is that you worry about every day is you got your heart, soul, and your house, your car, your kids, everything in that business. If it fails, you're more than likely got it loaned against your house. You're going to lose everything. So having said that, being a small business owner, everybody thinks that you set your own hours, and you do. Every single hour you do is that business. You're there when you're closed. You're there long hours. And you know, people see these businesses that are running great, making a lot of money, and those owners have put their heart and soul in that place to get it there. So I think that, you know, we're so fortunate to be in America because hard work, you can do anything you want, and that's what it takes. I've got two of my kids that are entrepreneurs. One of them is starting a trucking company, and the other one has many warehouses. And they've been fortunate because they had help. I grew up pretty poor, lived all around in the area I live. We moved around a lot. And I've always said that I want to have my own business, my own destiny, and that's what I've done. I've you know, started out pretty much with nothing and had a lot of good help from a lot of good mentors. But going back to high schools and colleges and things like that, most of my heroes are people that started their own business in my community and never went to college. And I think that's doable. My wife, she never went to college. She's probably one of the smartest people I know. She started her own business. There's a man that was in the legislature for 20 years, and he's one of the best business owners I know, and he's always been in business, never went to college. But I think we're doing our kids a disservice. We need to start these kids early. We need to catch them in middle school or before. And I was a store manager for Lowe's for a little time. In any business, we have a career path. In most business, you have a career path, and you say, we're going this way as a supervisor, or we're going this way as whatever. You have a career path. We're not doing that with our kids. With our kids in elementary school, we need to have a career path, and we need to tell them the advantages. Now we're steering them all toward college, I feel like. We need to give them the opportunity to say, look, if you want to do the college avenue, that's great, but you do have another opportunity, because what built America was these craftsmen, brick masons, electricians. You can just on, you can name them. And we can train those kids and steer them toward those paths. And a lot of times, a lot of states, New Hampshire, for instance, they literally, when they come out of high school in a lot of these career paths, they're going into business and they're working. And I think that's one thing we need to do, cut red tape, give our kids the opportunities and let them know what they can do coming out of high school, and have a career path. But being a business owner is not easy. It's hard. But all Americans have an entrepreneurial heart, I feel like. And if they could just see what it's like to own your own business and have that ownership, but they have to understand that that's something it's a lot of hard work, and you have to really put a lot in it. Also, I think that a lot of the things that we're teaching these kids in school is a disservice. You know, we've took cursive out of school. My kids can't even sign their own name. Your name and your name is really the only thing you really have is your name, your good name. And these kids can't even sign their name and have pride in it because we've took cursive. Yeah, it's all right here in the cell phones. We've took that away from them, and we're not even teaching them how to build a budget, balance a checkbook, because that's all on the computer. That's unfortunate. Because if the computers somehow go down, they don't know anything. But if we teach them kids young how to build a budget, how to balance a checkbook, it might be, I mean, how many people took algebra in high school and you're like, I'll never ever use this. And that's the same thing they're saying about balancing a budget. And they don't use it because they can't build a budget for their own family. So these things, we need to go back to the basics, teaching these kids, and let them build on that and be entrepreneurs if they want to. If they want to go to college, that's fine too. But a lot of these kids, they just don't have, we need to instill a lot of these things in them. And how simple would it be for us to teach cursive in high school again for 1 year or 2 years? I mean, just to let them have that nice signature. But thank y'all for having me. I know y'all got a lot of other people, and it's an honor to be here. And owning your own business is the best thing you can ever have. One other thing I want to touch on that they've touched on that I'm very passionate about is what Brad had spoke about was affordable housing. The middle class, all through really, when they come back from World War II, that's how the middle class, those soldiers come back, and that's how they bought a house, and that's the only way the middle class has ever been able to build wealth. And if we take that away, we're not going to have a middle class. We're going to have the rich, and we're going to have the poor. And the only way that most people have been able to send their, obviously we're in Georgia, we're lucky, we have the Hope Scholarship. But the only way most people have been able to send their kids to college is by getting a second mortgage on their house, because they built that wealth. We've took that away, we haven't, but the private equity groups buying up middle class housing and renting it is a travesty. Because I understand that private equity groups have a purpose, and they're great for buying. I mean, they're buying literally everything. They're buying doctor's offices, dentist office. I mean, you can name everything. But private equity groups have no business being in single-family housing, because our kids, I say our kids, but kids, I mean, there's people in the Capitol that are 30 years old, and they tell me all the time, we can't afford to buy a house. And I'll tell you why. I'm a capitalist. 100%. But when you have a company that's worth $1 trillion, their thumb is on the scale. You cannot compete with somebody like that. When they come in and offer $50,000 over asking and close in 15 days, a single family cannot compete with that. And we have to do something in America, because in Georgia, the numbers are, and I don't mean to get off on a tangent, but the numbers are, they own 40,000 houses just in Georgia. Once those houses are bought and made into rentals, they're never going to be fee simple again. They're always going to be rentals. They're going to sell them to another hedge fund. So we have to do something to be able to let our kids build houses. And apartments are great. But instead of building apartments, let's build condos. Condos is something that our kids can buy. They can afford them. It's the same building, but they're fee simple. You can go in and buy a condo. These families, a husband and wife or a single person can go in and buy a condo for $200,000, which is crazy, but they can afford that. Let's build condos and let them buy those and build equity, and then they can buy a house after that. I don't mean to get on a tangent, I apologize, but that's something I'm very passionate about. If we wipe out the middle class, America's done. And so thank you for your time, and I appreciate it.
No, thank you. We appreciate it. I'm going to open the Christmas tree opened up here, so you're going to have to take some questions. But the common theme from all the presenters today has been that they were passionate about their business and passionate about small business in particular. And I agree with you, and I think the committee will agree with you, that there are not enough opportunities for our people starting out to buy a home. Whether that's financing is limiting it, whether it's the price of the properties. But you're absolutely right. Fee simple ownership is the American dream. With that being said, Johnny's been very patient. Number 22, you've got the floor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll sit here as long as I can sit here. Every speaker's just had their own perspective, and Derek, I appreciate what you've talked about this morning, and Emery and Brad as well, and Todd. So I've been working in a community bank for 36 years, and seen a lot of what we've been talking about this morning, the passion from small business folks. And us as bankers, if there are added risks to take, that's what we should be, looking to take added risk as far as folks still, starting up small businesses and all the general the themes have been sort of the same. But work, I wrote down a couple of things, but being passionate and work ethic. But like even in our business, so in community banking, we all do the same thing. Every bank we sell the same products, we sell money, and we sell the same services, but man, at the end of the day, it's the passion that we want to help, to help each other and go the extra mile. We got a little thing that was kind of corny, but we call it the golden rule of banking. But just treat our customers the way we want to be treated, and being passionate about that. But work ethic, and as Brad said, it don't really matter what kind of business you've got, but if you're willing to get in there and do what it takes to make that business work, and as you said, it's not you got to be married to a small business. You got to be there. It's not 8 to 5 or whatever it is, but it's 7 days a week. So I appreciate everything that you said, and even in our little area up in North Georgia, the housing, and you hear all these folks that start businesses in their garage, in their basement, and you got to have a home to start that business. So I'm very passionate about trying to figure out a way that we can. Our prices in Blue Ridge, Georgia have gone, absolutely crazy. And the folks that I grew up with, and that we have kids and my grandkids that want to stay there, are having tough times being able to afford housing. So that's something, Mr. Chairman, I hope that we can work on and try to come up with some solutions. But appreciate everything you said and all the speakers this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Number 15.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my colleague. There was a lot being said, and I totally agree with most of everything you said, including and especially the home ownership. I discovered when I sat on that study committee that 60% of the homes in my district were purchased by investors. Mm-hmm. And so that's really a problem for us, and we have to figure out, how do we address this issue? How do we handle this? But what I want to advise is that there were bills, and so if the bill is not perfect, let's revisit it and have some bills put forth. I don't know how we're going to control it, but we're going to have to do that, because I agree with you. If you don't have the home, you don't have the equity, you can't move forward, and our children can't move forward. And I want to also make mention to the last speaker. He was talking about data centers, and I have to give a shout out to Fayetteville, because that's part of my district. There's a huge data center coming in, and people were resisting it, but we know this is coming. This is what's going to happen. So we have to prepare for the next generation. And also they have an innovation center, and I visited for our children, and they are doing amazing things there. So let's think outside the box. And let's get working for our youth so that they can take over when we sit down, and some of us are already ready to sit down.
Well, thank you for your input. I do have legislation for private equity groups buying our housing. It's not perfect, but I think we need to start somewhere. And I will be dropping this session. I feel like that to be honest, Georgia, Texas, and Arizona is the three hit list in America for them buying these, because our economy's so well and we're run so well. So I think I don't want to hurt Georgians. I have rental property myself. I don't want to hurt our Georgians that have rental property, but the outside entities, they're literally buying our state. And we can't allow that. I mean, the land is our natural resource, and we have to protect it.
And I'd like to support the bill.
Thank you.
All right, we got time for one more question. All right, number 16.
Yeah, thank you so much, Derek. I appreciate you. I hear your passion, and there's some things I align with very much so, and there's some things I just have some questions on. So, quick thing that I align with, or the question I want to know is similar to what my colleague just asked about. There were housing bills that addressed that certain need last session. That again, because of the limitation, they were not able to file them again. So there are bills already out there. We saw this coming. We talked and talked and held hearings on this about the investors, private equities firms coming into communities, especially underserved, underrepresented communities of color, and they were doing it, and no one said anything, but now it becomes the issue that it's impacting everybody, and we want to stand and start waving the white flag. So thank you, but there is bills, there are legislation out there. Second thing I want to ask, or make a comment on is the cursive. I am 100% for bringing back cursive into our school system, and the issue is, well, let me just say that if you drop that bill, I'll sign somewhere. I will sign. Get it? I'm gonna sign in cursive.
Yeah.
But then the other thing with this whole thing about, we can't forget the huge elephant in the room is that the guidance counselors, when I grew up, they guided you. But because of the amount of work and responsibilities, they're no longer career advisors or guiding them. That's the number one complaint I hear in a lot of my schools. So we've got to address that issue of their scope of work or what's needed for the kids to be aligned with the type of choices that they're making beyond high school. We talked about housing stability. Small businesses need housing stability. Whether you're doing your house, your in-home business or wherever, everybody needs housing stability. Until we address the root cause and get to a corrective action plan, then we're going to see small businesses suffering at a higher rate. And that helps, rent control helps on that end. So we need to really start looking and seeing how we can work together to cap it for a period of time and then move on to stabilize and get the economy sunset and get it back working. The last thing I'll say about is the things about the budget. In my district, what I'm doing is going into my apartment complexes and setting up we do literacy training, and I do budget building within the apartment complex to try to move them from renters to homeowners. Those are things that legislators can work with their banks, as what I do, and other areas to start building that up and transforming generational wealth.
Thank you. I will say one thing. So one thing that, and I'm for local control, don't get me wrong, but when the soldiers come back from World War II, you know what the average size house was? 1,000 square feet. And some of those people raised 4 and 5 kids. Now they've got the smallest house you can build is 3,000 square feet. Well, obviously that adds a cost. And I feel like that there's a need out there, and I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this, but there's a need for 800 and 1,000 square feet. But our young people, they don't want a yard. They don't want any of that stuff. They want amenities. But there again, they live in apartments because, 1, they can afford them for now. 2, they want the amenities. But if you give them another option for condos, there again, to buy something, they have those options. And I think it's a better fit. So, but having said that, like in your community, I'm curious to see what your city councils and county government put as a minimum on their housing. I mean, I think you could build 800 square foot houses and that people would be able to afford them and build equity and move on. So, but thank you. I appreciate that.
Super. Well, I'm going to add some closing remarks, and we've got two people that want to ask questions, but we can do that outside of committee. As far as the home ownership and the red tape and the smaller homes, I think that when the realtors come and make a presentation, they'll be addressing that, because a lot of that deals with zoning, red tape. The second thing is Vice Chairman Ray Martinez. I'm sorry we didn't have enough time to get to you. It's okay, but what we're going to do is you're going to be part of the restaurant program when we have the restaurants come. So I appreciate you being here for that. Thank you to our presenters. I appreciate everything that y'all have done. And as I said, I think the common theme is passion. And I like it, and some very good ideas that we can be looking at. And with that, if y'all have any questions, please bring it to
I have a
the...
question for you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
I noticed that we had some amazing speakers, but what I did not notice was the lack of gender diversity. So I heard from all male speakers today. I would like to know how we're going to diversify these speakers.
I'll be happy to address that. Our regular program canceled out, and I talked with these people yesterday during session. There's no rhyme or reason. It's just that they volunteered.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate
Thank you,
this.
Mr.
Meeting
Chairman.
adjourned. No, we have to have a forum.
Vice Chairman. I want to speak to Representative Martinez before he goes out too.
Yeah, I was just texting Mel this. I was just texting Mel. I was going to text him.
Yeah, I know from Marshawn's good morning.
Yes.
No.
Oh, no, don't worry about it. Oh, I know.